Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Why Office 365 Backup is Essential. This event is brought to you in partnership with Veeam and produced by Actual Tech Media. Thank you everyone for joining us on today's special webinar event. Before we get started, we just have a little bit of housekeeping here that I'd first like to cover. My name is David Davis of Actual Tech Media, and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar. We want you to know that we encourage questions on this event. You can ask questions there in the questions tab. It's just to the left of your slides window. I can call your attention to it now. If you see it moving around right there, that is the questions tab. I know a number of you have already discovered it. We appreciate all the hello and welcome messages from around the world and across the United States. Thank you for those. Of course, we also encourage your technical questions throughout the event. We'll be doing a live demo, and we have experts from Veeam ready to answer your questions. We'll be doing a dedicated Q&A session at the end of today's presentation, so get your questions in early. We also have a few handouts on the Handouts tab. You can download the Office 365 Backup for Dummies ebook right there, as well as 6 critical reasons for Office 365 Backup, the special report, and finally an IDC research paper on Office 365 Backup in Veeam. So make sure that you check out those resources. And then finally, there's a free 30-day trial license link that you can click on in the Handouts tab to try out the Veeam Office 365 Backup solution for yourself. And then finally, we'll be announcing the winner of the Amazon $300 gift card at the end of today's live presentation. If you're watching this on demand, I'm sorry, the drawing has already occurred. The prize terms and conditions can be found in the Handouts tab. And with that, I'm excited to introduce you to today's expert presenters. They are Corinne Bissett, technologist for product strategy at Veeam, and Mr. Edward Watson, product marketing manager at Veeam. Corinne and Edward, thank you so much for being on the event today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, David.
And with that, I'll hand it first over to you. Take it away, Edward.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much all for joining us today. Like David mentioned, we have a very exciting webinar here for you today. Great agenda, great lineup. We're going to cover the acceleration that we're seeing in the market, right, as kind of a level set. Then go over to the why, right? Why is Office 365 Backup so essential? We're going to cover the shared responsibility model versus your responsibility and Microsoft's. Retention policies that come out of the box within Office 365, and then, of course, go straight into Veeam solution, how Veeam does it, Veeam Backup for Microsoft Office 365, and then, of course, the exciting demo, live dangerous demo. We do hope the demo gods are with us today. And then, of course, we'll wrap up with a Q&A. Diving straight in. So just to kind of level set, who is Veeam, right? What do we do? So Veeam is really, we were one of the first to come out in the virtualization age, right? Kind of first to market with a backup solution for those virtualized types of environments, right? So the vSpheres, the Hyper-Vs of the world, right? Right at that advent of the virtual revolution. Encompassing cloud-based workloads, SaaS-based workloads, everything from virtual to physical, all within this Veeam availability platform many of you may be familiar with. And of course, I'd be remiss without mentioning our ecosystem of partners, right? So within each of these, from the cloud to the virtual to physical, we have an ecosystem of various integrations and partners that we deal with and partner with to offer these solutions and storage capabilities. And just a quick by the number slide here. So 76% of the Global 2000 Fortune 500 are Veeam customers. We're in 160 countries, have 4,500 employees globally, 365,000 customers worldwide, $1 billion in revenue. And of course, we're very, very, very proud of our industry average when it comes to the customer satisfaction rates that we have. We have this index that marks that we're alongside the very best companies in the industry. So we're, again, very, very proud of these stats, and we're only continuing to grow. So with that, let's dive into the topic today. So remote workers are really driving this increase. I don't think I need to really go into much detail on the current climate. We obviously know that the remote transition that's taken place, and really our lives have all been upended in the sense that we're now many of us working remotely for the very first time. We're managing workforces that are for the first time being majority remote, right? So that brings a whole new set of challenges for us as the IT community. But of course, we always adapt to that change. And you can see some of the numbers here, right, that we may not have seen. 200 million Office 365 users, 12 million Teams users added in 1 week alone. And of course, Microsoft Teams is one of those productivity tools that only continues to grow, continues to innovate. 44 million active Teams users to date. But of course, amongst all of this kind of revolution and change that's happening and that we're seeing, of course, that does bring about a whole new set of challenges. And Corinne's going to walk us through some of those challenges in the remote space.
Yeah, especially with the explosion of so many more users using this technology and this collaborative data platform, allowing us to have it on our phone, on our computer, our tablet, and a couple of laptops we have laying around. We're able to access this from multiple remote devices. And a lot of these remote devices are not on your company's domain. They're personal devices, the BYOD market, and that entire conversation about security patches on those devices with firewalls, antivirus, security patches are probably the biggest risk that we're going to run into end devices, because a part of the group policy in most domains is to update and push updates for those security patches. And when you have devices logging into this platform without those security patches, you put those credentials at even more risk. But we enjoy this mobility and portability of the data, and we want to continue to use it. Another huge factor that we have with this work at home life is the physical firewall. Most homes don't have a physical firewall, or if they have a firewall built into the router, it's not configured with those optimal security settings. It's usually left pretty open so that you're able to access those external sites for personal use. And within an organization or within a building where your organization is at, you'd expect a higher level of security that you're just not going to have at a home type of environment. And that brings us down to public Wi-Fi, which, if you've been in IT for any period of time, this has become a breeding ground for all kinds of attacks. And the idea of education, letting your users know that when they're connected to these types of sources, they better be connected to a VPN, or they're just asking for their data to be stolen. And that can be a problem. Now, it leads us into the reasons why you would want to back up, what potential risks that these data entities can consider.
Absolutely. So in addition to this changing climate, in addition to the challenges, we are seeing that Office 365 backup is becoming ever more critical. We always go back and show these 6 reasons why. So accidental deletion is definitely something that pops up as something you need to be aware of. So accidents happen. I know I've deleted things. I'm sure you've deleted things accidentally. I'm sure you've had to go in and maybe you've been tasked with finding something that's been deleted. And it's not so much the deletion itself that really matters. It's what happens post-deletion, what happens after that deletion has occurred. Are you able to recover that data? And are you able to recover that data in the manner in which your business requires? Being able to find that needle in a haystack to essentially find that data, make sure it's recoverable, right? That's very critical. And of course, if it's outside of the window that comes out of the box in Office 365, that's when some troubles and some data loss can occur. And we're going to deep dive into those retention policies and exactly uncover when that data becomes risk of actual loss occurring. Internal security threats, right? So those are the internal employees we deal with. And many of them, if they're fired or let go, or if something bad happens, they may want to retaliate. They could want to cause a little bit of chaos before they leave the company. And there can sometimes be even more innocent things where they, before they leave the company, they think that deleting some files before they leave actually helps with confidentiality and things of that nature. But in fact, they're now putting your business's data at risk of data loss. External security threats, those are the ones we've all heard about. We've all heard about the ransomwares of the world, right? Rogue apps, things of that nature. And we certainly do not want our businesses to become victims of those, right? Those larger viruses out there in the world. Legal and compliance requirements, of course, we all want to be able to have control over that data, especially I know many different industries and customers that Veeam has actually use our own solution, Office 365 backup solution, to find that needle in a haystack, make sure that files and folders and certain data points are recoverable so they can actually meet specific compliance needs for their industry. And many times those can be very hard to retrieve and search and find. So that's definitely a consideration. And to top it all off, in addition to the current climate, in addition to all of the various vulnerabilities, we of course have the added complexity of a hybrid deployment, right? So many of us may have some form of on-prem Exchange and Office 365 environment, and making sure that that data is completely protected and you have control across that hybrid environment is of utmost importance. So that's definitely an important one as well. And how often do these reasons actually happen? I can talk about these reasons all day. What forms of data loss have you experienced within the cloud? That's a question we actually asked 1,500 Veeam customers late last year. And by far and away, user error accidental deletion did come up on the list at 37%. Security threats, ransomware also came up, no surprise there. And retention policy gaps, right? Thinking something's protected when it's not. Those retention policies that come out of the box in O365, 19%. So again, these are reasons that all really do happen. And of course, if we look out in the greater market, 6 out of 10 organizations are without any form of backup, recoverability, search, governance. They're simply an afterthought. This is from research that IDC conducted. And again, if you are one of these 6 out of 10 organizations listening today, hopefully now this presentation kind of gives you some good understanding and next steps of why that data is so critical to be protected. So now we're going to switch gears. We've given the reasons. Now let's dive into why do I need a backup, right? That's kind of the number one question I get all the time out in the market. Doesn't Microsoft take care of that backup, right? And this is really a tale of two responsibilities. So when it comes to your perception, right, your perception is perhaps that Microsoft takes care of everything, right? That we adopted this cloud technology, these productivity tools, and that the infrastructure and the data are both safe under this umbrella and everything's taken care of. But unfortunately, that's so much different than the reality. And again, it goes back to that tale of two responsibilities. Office 365, Microsoft do a great job at the uptime of the infrastructure. They promised you the service, they deliver on that service, and again, they're in charge of the infrastructure component. When it comes to the data, that's still very much your responsibility. And you need to make sure that data is within your control for protection, both for long-term retention and short within O365. And with that, we're actually going to cover Microsoft's framework that they've provided for users and IT admins to understand the responsibility further. Feel free, Corinne.
Yeah, the responsibility model from Microsoft is a platform that was built out for each of their cloud as a service offerings, whether it's infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or in what we're dealing with, the Office 365 software as a service. Microsoft is responsible for that redundancy, your global infrastructure, making sure that you're able to access and authenticate with that infrastructure. They're great at zone redundancy, fault tolerance, and any type of geo redundancy of that data. And a recycling bin, which is what they consider a soft delete or a short term cycle. But you're actually responsible for the integrity and the retention and long term retention of that data when it comes to splitting down the responsibility model for SaaS offering. So on the security side, you're responsible for the credentials. They're responsible for the authentication server. You're responsible for the roles that you assign to the owners of your data. And they're responsible for the role processing of that data, meaning that they've authenticated properly with the roles that you've set. So a lot of the user end entity, including the data, is on the responsibility of the customer. And that leaves us to the limited access and control of your data, regulatory exposure, security vulnerabilities, and any type of retention gaps are all dangers to your data without a backup of that Office 365 data. And this is what their delete cycle and retention cycle looks like. Microsoft has what you call a soft delete and a hard delete. A soft delete is within a small retention window as to when you can recover that data. And then a hard delete is when you're no longer able to recover that data at all, meaning that it is out of their hands and is your responsibility. As you can see, most of these fall within the 30-day mark. But we found in a lot of cases in polling with end users, the time frame that you realize that you're missing data is actually within the 140 days, which is well outside of that period that your data's already been hard deleted. And that's not just deleted from your everyday users, that's from, say, a user leaves your company or an employee leaves your company. And you've removed them from AD, you've removed all of their services as any responsible administrator would do, so it can no longer be accessed. Well, if, say, 90 days later that employee comes back for any type of uh, to sue you for wrongful termination or that you stole their intellectual property, you're not able to provide the e-discovery information required for any type of legal processing, which could hold you at fault for any type of court case, which can cost you a lot of money in the end. So when we're looking at a protection, we're able to cover the entire retention period range with Veeam backup for Microsoft Office 365. And that chart is to show 5+ years in range.
Great. Yeah. So in essence, yeah, we're covering all retention policy gaps there are with this product, and let's dive deeper into these capabilities. So with Veeam Backup from Microsoft Office 365, we're essentially eliminating the risk. We've talked about all the vulnerabilities thus far in the presentation here. We're eliminating all of the risk of that data loss from occurring, whether that be in Exchange Online, whether that's SharePoint Online, OneDrive for Business, or even Microsoft Teams, allowing you a variety of different storage targets to back up to, including if you want to leverage your on-premises, if you have that extra local storage available, or even if you want to leverage the cloud. And we'll talk through those options as well. Allowing you to protect against all the vulnerabilities, give you the restore options you need, as well as meet those legal and compliance requirements that are so important to your business. We also have a community edition.
Yeah, and this community edition, I think, falls in line with the rest of our products where we try to give something back to the community with each edition of the product, meaning that we give you something for free. And most of the time, it's nearly completely unlocked for a specific number of license or users. And in this case, you can use Microsoft Office 365 backup for up to 10 users, backing up their SharePoint Online, their Microsoft Exchange, OneDrive, and even their team's backend data completely free.
And we're also constantly innovating on this product line. New in the version 4 of this product is actually object storage support. So we just started last winter. We released this product, and we know that many businesses today are going cloud first. That's no secret. That's no surprise. And to that, we've provided now a cloud optimized deployment option, whether you want to actually deploy directly in AWS or deploy directly in Azure and leverage object storage, all the benefits of object storage, whether that's the reduced costs, unlimited scalability, and simplifying those deployments. So again, constant innovation on our part in terms of this product line, and definitely keep our ear to the Veeam forums to adopt any changes our customers want to hear. So now with that, we're going to get into the fun stuff, folks, with how it actually works. Corinne's going to take us through that now.
Yeah, so Veeam Backup for Microsoft Office 365 is a platform that not only is able to back up your in the cloud data, but your on-premises versions of Exchange and SharePoint, meaning that we can run in a complete hybrid configuration. You're not needing multiple pieces of software to perform your singular function. And then we offer a flexibility of whether you want to store that data on premises or if you want to send it up to the cloud in a lot of various object storage. There's big names here, whether it's an Amazon S3, Microsoft Azure Blob, IBM Cloud. But we're also S3 compatible across the board. If you have a vendor already that you work with an S3 storage, we can leverage that S3 storage to send data to. And we talk a lot about backup of data, But you also want something that expands on the restore of that data. So you have the options to restore not only to the original location, but restore to a new location, restore to the original location, but keep your current files in case you want to check versioning, exporting that data. And with our VCSP providers, we're able to offer you a self-service restore as well. Now, it's not just about being able to restore that data, but restore that data in a format that makes sense for the application that you're working with. And we offer over 25 different options to accommodate for those different resource types, such as with Exchange, we're able to not only restore back to the original location, but we can export those files as MSG files or PST files, which are native formats to that data. Meaning you're not just getting a raw data backup, you're getting a restore that's smart enough to know what type of restore that you're doing. And that takes us into the demo. Now, this is the Microsoft backup console through Veeam. We have a simple configuration where you're able to add your organization. You can run a multi-tenancy by adding multiple organizations just by adding additional orgs to this console under the same view. Under repositories, we're able to have several different types of repositories depending on where you'd like to send your data. I have mine configured to be able to send not only to object storage for certain job types, but I have my Exchange, OneDrive, and SharePoint for a lot of my organizations split up across folders so that I'm able to easily migrate that data at any time. We offer the expandability of having backup proxies, which allow us to offload that processing power to multiple machines in case you have a larger environment or you start to grow your environment and realize that you need to expand. Adding any type of repository for object storage is very straightforward. You just need your access key and secret. You're able to also encrypt that data going to the storage. With Amazon S3, we offer the ability to send that data to an infrequent access tier to also save you money in the long term. We do keep a local cache for any type of repository on this machine. This local cache contains a metadata that allows us to do faster restores and an archive connection for what types of objects have already been set up so we don't have to send duplicate objects to the cloud. So not only does this help with restore, it helps faster backup as well. Now, taking a look at the jobs, our jobs are very flexible in the types of data that you can select to be able to back up in your infrastructure, whether you want to go from specific users, groups, sites, or if you select choosing to back up your entire organization, you have the further granularity to be able to edit whether or not you're backing up just your email, OneDrive, or sites from each of these selections. I'll go ahead and remove that there. Now, in this demonstration, I'm going to show you that I have my OneDrive map locally. Having your OneDrive map locally makes it extremely easy to be able to download and upload files to your OneDrive account. But this leaves open an extra layer of a vulnerability. This script was written to be able to encrypt these files on your local machine, so it kind of simulates what would happen if ransomware to hit. And if you notice, all of these files on the machine have updated their modify date to just now, meaning that they've already been changed. The problem that also occurs is the sync. The sync is already synced to my OneDrive in the cloud. So if I come up here and try to access those same files, they've already been updated as of just a few moments ago, meaning I can no longer access any type of critical reports and data because it's been encrypted. For the restore process, we can select from the entire organization if we're not sure which job has performed this backup. So we can go to the latest point in time and we'll let this load. And this is loading from the local metacache, meaning that unless you do an advanced search, everything from here is not occurring any extra data from, say, an object storage if you choose to restore your objects from that side. Now, I'm going to right click on the entire folder because I know everything in that drive was compromised. and I'm able to use the override option. If you use the keep option, it allows you to keep the existing files on that drive, but then it adds an extension at the end saying that these were a restored copy. And it's going to start that restore process in the background. And we'll almost immediately start to notice, especially inside of this folder, that these dates will start to update with the proper modification dates for when they were created. While we're waiting on that, I'd like to take a look at the other explorers because it's good to point out that these explorers have all of the same look and feel. So you're not learning or feeling like you're learning something completely different every time that you go in to try to restore each of these types of data. Now, taking a look at the Exchange Explorer, it's a little more familiar with looking at your mailbox and your users. And underneath of there, you have the same options to right click to be able to restore these entire mailbox archives. And say your conversational history, if you're having conversations inside of Team Chat, you'll be able to pull that up from here. And again, from say the SharePoint Online Explorer, you see it from your database files and your sites and folders underneath of your organization, and not just from your personal sites, but your sites that you would find in your team stores and your content and sub-content sites. Now, it looks like it's complete because it's given us a little flash here. If you take a look at the restore window, it gives you a nice overview. If any of these files didn't already exist in the database, it'll let you know that those are not going to be restored, or if it was forced, as well as what was successful in the description if necessary for each of those files.
So, when it comes to this solution, we have many different customers. You can see here many different industries that have adopted this product. Anything from, you can see, environmental to hospitals to football and fashion. These are all companies that fundamentally understand the need to back up that Office 365 data, right? So we've had 99,000 downloads, representing 10 million users. So again, we're very proud of the momentum and the growth around this product that we've had, and the customers really understand the need to back up that data. And we'd like to leave you with this backup solution checklist as well. As you're entering this data protection market for Office 365, definitely take note of all of these various aspects of the solution, right? So whether it's the features, make sure that you have feature-rich solutions when it comes to the backup of this data, whether it's Exchange, SharePoint, Teams, like we mentioned. Make sure that your solution has the restore options that you need, right? So we've discussed the 25 different restore options that Veeam has. Make sure that your solution has as many, if not more, right? So flexibility and choice, whether it's deploying on premises or in the cloud, right? Veeam's solution can do that. Make sure it comes with no lock-ins. We know many backup vendors today actually will kind of force you into using a particular storage, forcing you into their storage. So make sure that you have the flexibility to use any storage that you want, and even switch storage at any time, which is what Veeam allows. Innovation, obviously, very important. But scale is still very important. Whether you have a small number of users or up to a large number of users, scale is obviously very important. Integration, right? We've talked through AWS S3, Azure Blob, all the various storage integrations that we have. So make sure that you have a solution that gives you, again, the options and the integrations that you need. Breadth of service, also extremely important. We covered the Veeam Cloud Data Management Platform at the beginning there. Make sure that you have a platform that can encompass any workloads that you have, right? So we know that Office 365 and SaaS-based workloads are one of many different workloads you may have, virtual workloads, physical workloads, right? So make sure that the solutions that you have are like Veeam in terms of the platform, in terms of encompassing all the various workloads that you have that need to be protected. A few next steps here. We hope that you do obviously download the product, right? So we hope that you do take a look for yourself. Take a free 30-day trial of Veeam Backup from Microsoft Office 365. You can take the 30-day trial, no limitations. as well as the community edition, which Corinne went over, that is up to 10 users or 1 terabyte of SharePoint data. So again, if you have smaller organizations, you can use Community Edition completely for free, up to 10 users. And of course, read up or share. David mentioned we have this handout here, the Office 365 Backup for Dummies ebook. So that's as you're navigating the Office 365 data protection market, maybe looking at vendors to pick from, definitely use this book as kind of your navigation and to kind of use this as a checklist, as it were, to vet out your backup vendors.
So much good feedback on the demo. I know these live demos can be high risk. Hopefully, you got to see a good example of what Office 365 backup from Veeam looks like in Corinne's demo there. Let's jump into Q&A now. And while we do that, I'm going to bring up this poll question on the screen that says, what additional information would you like about the Veeam solution that you learned about on today's event? And let's kick it off with some Q&A. First question that came in, and I'm sure, Edward, you can see the questions there in the queue. I'm going to start with the one here from James. It says, how do you back up Microsoft Teams? Is it possible to back up Microsoft Teams with Office 365 backup from Veeam?
In that case, yes, of course we do. We do back up Microsoft Teams. And really, when it comes to backing up Microsoft Teams, we actually do it by default. So when we back up Exchange Online, when we back up OneDrive for Business, we're actually backing up the Teams data that actually resides by default within each of these productivity tools. So by default, we're actually backing that up. Now, that may change in the future at some point when we have the native APIs available to us. But during the meantime, this is the method with which we can back up Microsoft Teams, although not natively currently.
Backing up Microsoft Teams mostly comes down to understanding what Microsoft Teams is, which is a front end interface for a lot of the back end offerings from Microsoft Office 365. So the conversations that you have between two people, those are actually through an Exchange back end. So there's a folder in your Exchange called conversations, which we actually saw on the demo if you're able to see that. And those contain all of your conversations that you've had between people. If you have a group within your organization, those are actually a SharePoint site. So any data that is shared between two people on there is actually saved in the back end of SharePoint. So we do back up all of those back end data points. It's just we're not able to do a direct injection back to the original location until Microsoft Teams completely opens up those APIs to inject back into that console. But you still have that data to be able to restore from for any type of compliance reasons.
Got it. Got it. Okay. It's interesting to understand how Teams and SharePoint and Office 365 all kind of work together there, the different pieces that make that possible. Next question is this product part of Veeam backup and replication? In other words, I know most IT pros are familiar with Veeam backup and replication. Is this something that installs with that? Is Veeam backup and replication required, or is this a separate product altogether?
This is actually a separate platform altogether just for the Microsoft Office 365 offerings. You do not require Veeam backup and replication. And as of recent, in the last, I think, 6 months, we don't even recommend installing them on the same server because they are an incompatible configuration. They're just two different products.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. Okay. And is this something that doesn't have to be installed on premises at all? Can this totally run in the cloud?
Yes, we have direct access through both the marketplace for Azure and AWS to be able to install it into the cloud environment. But essentially, we spin up a Windows machine, install the Office 365 software, and you can back up directly to those blobs and avoid any type of on premises footprint for your Office 365 offerings.
Very nice. Very nice. And so does this just run in Azure? Does it run in other clouds? How does that work?
Any cloud that you can technically spin up a Windows machine and install the software on, we're able to leverage. We just have native offerings by offering it through the marketplace in Azure and AWS to
Got it.
take out that
Okay.
extra step. Yeah.
Okay. Nice. And then there's a question here about throttling. How does that work through Microsoft?
So, throttling is something that Microsoft implements on all organizations. And depending on how large your organization are, your throttling metrics tend to be higher. Now, these are not published for exactly what your throttling metrics are, but you have to think of it in terms of these throttling metrics are in place to prevent their servers to undergo like a DDoS attack and the inability for you to access that data itself. So, if you have a larger organization, they're going to expect more requests from you at the same time. Exchange and SharePoint and OneDrive both have two separate throttling metrics. EWS service, which is for the Exchange Online side, is based on the user connection to that mailbox to be able to back up that mailbox and will tap out that EWS connection stream with the maximum amount of connections with the worker threads. Now, when it comes to SharePoint Online and OneDrive, their metrics are a little different. It's per account per access to site or OneDrive, meaning that if you have multiple accounts used to back up that site or OneDrive, you can actually access the data in parallel under the same throttling metrics, which is why in our most recent version, we implemented something called auxiliary backup accounts, meaning that you can make additional accounts that you can add into our console to be able to back up from those sites in parallel, meaning that you're getting a faster download overall and can meet a lower RPO.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Another question came in about the community edition. Is it a trial, or is the community edition always free?
It is completely free, but it is limited to 10 users or 1 terabyte of SharePoint data. So again, if you have a smaller organization where you have maybe just a handful of users or maybe just a department that you feel needs to be protected, then you can in fact use Community Edition completely free for the lifetime of that product. So free forever in terms of that Community Edition product.
Nice. And I want to point out to everyone that the link that's there in the handouts tab that says free 30-day trial license, if you click on that, it brings you to the download page for the Veeam Community Edition plus a 30-day full trial license. So you really get both there. If you go to that page and opt to download the trial edition, you'll get the Community Edition as well, is what it appears to me. Is that right, Edward?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, nice. And then another question, Chris is asking, can this back up a group of users or a specific user, or do you have that kind of fine-grained control, or does it back up essentially all of your users?
Answer that question, we have a lot of options to be able to back up your users, and we tap into the native Microsoft Office 365 groups as well. So you can back up by Office 365 groups, you can back up by individual users, you can back up by specific sites, you can select the entire organization. It's completely up to however you would like to choose to do your backup. And you can have multiple jobs for the same organization, meaning that you could have your users' data going to different entities. I like to say that if you want to send your data to object storage, you could have different object storage accounts for different organization parts, like say IT or HR or finance having their own folder so you can charge the business accordingly as well.
Okay, nice. I like that control there. There is a question here about compliance. Um, is the cloud storage HIPAA safeguarded? I'm not sure if we can answer that right now,
As
or if
far
we need more
as I
information.
know, they should be all HIPAA compliant as long as you have your credentials locked down for what kind of service or who can access that machine, as long as that person has rights to access that machine. HIPAA is all about the information control, and only people who are supposed to be able to see that data can see that data. So if you're an IT administrator in your building, chances are you're seeing the same information as if you were going to be an administrator of the Office 365 console.
Okay, okay. There's another question here about the licensing or pricing model, is it based on users or is it based on how much data you store?
It's based completely on users when it comes to getting the license through us. We have various VCSP options through our providers that allow you different kinds. Most of them do go off of the amount of users, but some of them do tap into a different cost for users per the amount of data. So it depends on who you get your license through and if you decide to go with a provider to take some of that overhead out of your department.
Okay, okay, that makes sense. So if people go, they download the trial, can you kind of walk us through what happens after that? Do they get a link to install the application, or what are the steps really?
It's actually all on the same page, and it's the same software no matter if you download the trial or the community edition. It just depends on the license that you apply to it. And then you can download the software and you get the license from that same window. There's just two different buttons, and then you install and apply that same license.
Nice, nice. Well, it sounds super easy to do, and it sounds like something that so many companies out there could really use, with more and more companies using Office 365 and Teams these days. So many of those companies might not be aware that data protection isn't really included and it's not really built in, and they need to protect themselves with a product like Office 365 Backup from Veeam. So I think we've covered all the questions that have come in. This has been a really excellent session. I love the conversational education. I love the demo portion as well. Edward and Corinne, thank you so much for being on the event today.
Thank you for having
Thanks,
us.
David.
Before we go, I want to award the Amazon $300 gift card to Robert Farrand, Farrand from Nebraska. Congratulations. Robert Farrand from Nebraska will reach out to you to deliver your prize. And make sure that you check out the free 30-day trial and the community edition of Veeam Backup from Microsoft Office 365. Again, the handouts link has, or the handouts tab has a link to that free 30-day trial license, and you can give it a try for yourself. As Corinne and Edward mentioned, it's super easy to install and get started. Thank you everyone for joining today's webinar. I learned a lot. I hope that you did as well. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.